Um, well, it's here I am. I want to introduce you to Mark. Actually, if you've been to the project the last couple of years, you probably have actually seen Mark. He's been at one of our evenings. I think it was a couple of years ago, Mark. I can't remember. And we had just a kind of a roundtable discussion about money. If there's one thing I know about Mark is that he knows money, but more than anything, just really good stewardship of it. It's not about this moment. This teaching or podcast is not about how to make more money. It's just in a time of plenty and a time of nothing, how do you steward your finances well? We do view money, for some of you who maybe don't have a relationship with Jesus or kind of buy into what we do. We just do think that money and finances are a gift from God, and we need to be responsible for it and with it. And it's a way of experiencing God's goodness or holding it against ourselves or other people. And so Mark is just, Mark's great. I've gotten to know Mark a little bit over the last couple of years. Our boys have gotten to know each other over a fortnight and some church events and stuff like that. But Mark, thanks for being with us. I really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Yeah. Mark, do you want to just give us a really quick rundown of kind of what your job is, what you do?
Sure. So we have more than one title. My title that is on my card is a portfolio manager. So we would run customized portfolios for affluent clients. In addition to that, I'm also a financial planner, an investment advisor. The reason why we would have three different titles is there's three major roles that we would serve. So a portfolio manager, when we're making all the investment decisions, that's what we do. And an investment advisor, where we would be a counselor, making sure that boards and organizations are making wise investment allocation decisions.
Okay.
And a financial planner would definitely pertain to what we're talking about right now, which is simply making sure that we have more money to invest and less money leaving us. So three major roles, and this will be my 24th year.
Wow.
In the business.
So you've been doing it for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
You got a little bit of experience. Yeah. That's great. So
I've never seen anything like this though. Just for the record.
Oh wow.
This is rare. This is extreme. So for anybody feeling anxious, do know that these are unprecedented times.
Yeah.
And you're not alone. We know very few of us have seen anything like this. So this is an opportunity we can learn from, and it's very valuable that we can do this right now.
Yeah, well, you think about it, like, one day really changed everything. It's really what it was. And then a week later, everything was changed again. It's just one of those really, really strange times, right? And it's hard to plan for a pandemic. It's hard to plan for this stuff. And so I'm going to shoot a scenario to you. So I'm between 18 and 30 years old. I may be in school, but what I do know is I'm at the beginning of my career, or even just I haven't even really started it, but I've maybe got loans. I lost my job. I can't work. Maybe I'm an EI, or I'm just in the middle of it. And I'm kind of caught a little bit because I don't know what to do. And so, what do you say to someone in that kind of position?
Okay, so the first thing I would say, and I can't separate my investment worldview from my biblical worldview.
Sure.
In fact, my investment worldview, my financial planning worldview is subject to my biblical worldview. So the first thing is we have to trust that God himself is our provider. And we have to trust in the providence of God, which I have seen in hard times like this and obviously in good times. So to acknowledge this and to put faith in God, it is something material that I've spoken about before and I'll continue to speak about, because we have evidence that it works, and that is honoring God first with our first fruit, which is our tithe. Mm-hmm. So whether it's $1,000, God teaches by percentage because he is looking for the faith. If it's $1,000 or $10,000 or $100, if we would trust God with the very little that we have, God will honor that. So that's the first thing I do think I should say. The second thing is, in our culture that we live in, I've discovered that we're very good at blurring the line between a want and a need.
Sure.
So if we are limited in the income that we're taking in because of the circumstances we have to focus on what we can control. So there's two things we can control in a difficult situation like that. Three things. First is if we would put action to the faith of honoring God with our first fruit, that would be the first. The second is, are there anything, any strategies, any choices, any friends that can help us increase our income? So I would write that down right away. And then the third is take a look at every single dollar that we spend. It's all electronic now. And if possible, when times are hard, even when times are good, try and eliminate 20% of that.
Okay.
For real practical financial planning. So if you follow the math on that, you actually have the ability to increase your free cash flow. Money that's left over is what free cash flow is, of 30%.
Okay.
And do it once a month, once a week if possible. But I found that's very difficult. So just right off the bat, that's what I would counsel.
Okay. Yeah, that a balance between wants and needs, that's hard things. I think when you are in a place where maybe you haven't been concerned about your finances too much, that line is very, very blurred, and maybe even someone is in a really good financial position. A lot of what we deem need are really just wants. They're just hidden by need, right? And so I think that idea of being able to look back and going, okay, there's an opportunity, right? To go, what is it that I actually really need, versus what's kind of maybe a bit of the fluff area of my life. I was in another meeting with someone talking about through the fitness side of things. And they said, if you really wanted to make it a priority in your life, there's coupons, there's ways that you can get help, financially, if you need to be careful with the money you spend on your food and things like that. And so the second thing you brought up, the idea is there anyone in your life that kind of help out? Do you mind explaining that a little bit more?
Absolutely. Yeah. So when I say help out, I don't mean financially. I mean, for lack of a better term, connections wise. Okay. So are there any individuals that you know of that, first off, model Christian character that you would learn from and you can ask their advice? And from that, likely those individuals, being good stewards, would know of opportunity. So for example, in our business, our firm has a hiring freeze, but again, trusting that God provides, I was still able, God willing, to help two friends get a job. So just to give you an example, that's what I mean specifically about that, is if we can learn from anybody and look for the opportunities from people that are hiring. Skip the dishes, that business is booming, right? There are certain restaurants that are actually booming. So learning from those opportunities. Here's another one. Right now we are using Zoom to get this message out.
Yeah.
So I think technology companies, one advantage that I think our young adults would have is they would probably know how to use technology better than certainly other demographics.
Yeah.
Maybe our boys do one, right?
Yeah.
So we don't. I don't think that we're going to go backwards from this, meaning using technology less after this is all said and done. So if we can learn how technology is going to change and evolve and have our young adults be part of the solution for the future for these businesses and find ways to help businesses and by default will help themselves. That's what I mean by using the resources that we have in a very difficult circumstance.
Yeah, that's great. I think, that the first point you made too, even just that percentage wise, it is true. If you look through the Bible, especially in the New Testament, Paul, he talks about give in proportion to what you can, right? And I think percentages help a lot, when you're thinking that way and I think it's okay at this point. Maybe it'd be good to get your feelings on it. But if your income has decreased over this time, percentages help a lot. Then it's okay. We'll give in proportion to that.
100%. Yeah. So no, that's the significance of percentages. And if I may, also increase as well.
Hmm.
inevitably, when we pass through this difficult season, I think all of our incomes will increase, partially because for some people they need to, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the significance of learning percentages is if we trust God at, one of my favorite quotes is from John Rockefeller, who adjusted for inflation, his net worth we've calculated to be 191 billion.
Hmm.
And this is what he said: I would not have learned how to tithe on the first million I made if I didn't tithe on the first dollar I made.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, uh, correct me if I'm wrong. A tithe on a dollar is 10 cents,
Yeah.
and a tithe on a million is not 10 cents. Is
It's
that
not 10 cents. It's not. Yeah. Yeah.
so? So that's the part of the percentage. Is if we can trust that the same Lord that provides, and I have evidence that it's true, at $1 and $100 is the same Lord that provided at $1 million.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I like about this is that there's just that healthy balance, right? There's that spiritual stewardship. I think part of it, it keeps us from being, it's one of the reasons why Jesus teaches about it, because it's like, this is an antidote to greed. An antidote to greed is giving, and giving with a cheerful heart. It's the idea of, where can I serve with what's been given to me? But I think the other balance too is, like you said, looking at our actual spending and being like, where can I cut 20% of my spending this next month? Or where do I need to cut now? What are my wants and needs? That's part of good stewardship. That is part of maturing, and adulting is part of that. And so, would you say that this moment that we have, this economic moment that we're in, would you say this is probably, isn't it better being young right now in this moment than being 60 or 70 and realizing I should have done this a long time ago?
That's the exactly. That is the one major benefit that our young adults have, is that we're learning this lesson at 21 versus 61. And unfortunately, I can promise you, I see people that are learning this at 61.
Hmm.
So if we can learn this at 21 and write down and remember these lessons, it's going to benefit them for 50 years.
Yeah.
And you and I were talking about our grandparents would have taught us about the Great Depression. And our parents, which are byproducts of their hardship, they learned the value of a dollar in a different way because of what their parents taught us, our grandparents. So the significance of this event, which is severe and scary, is the lessons for the next 50 years.
Hmm.
I dare say the value of a dollar, the value of simply going to church,
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
takes
Right.
on a new meaning for me. Some of the freedoms that I thought that I used to have that I now don't have, clearly there's things that I took for granted. So if time is a commodity, and if time can communicate value, surely some of the things that I was spending money on before don't have the same value today as they used to. So therefore, the one value of this experience is indeed the dividends it's going to pay in terms of the life lessons for the next 50 years.
Yeah. 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 That's true. Any other kind of, you think, even just practical advice for someone in their 20s, walking through what they're walking through right now, that you would say, here's a couple really good things for you to think through practically?
Right. So the neat thing about understanding talent is, and trusting that it's God-given, which I genuinely believe it is, there is God-given talent that we each have. So the first thing is to recognize what, and we're alive in this moment for a reason.
Hmm.
So what has God put in our hearts that we've always wanted to do that we haven't done yet? And where can we apply our talents to use? So practical things is things that we were delaying that we now have time to do, from looking at different business opportunities to writing a book to there's a client that we know that's rehearsing a play that they've been meaning to do for a long time. So the first thing is to use the time that we have, and understanding that when this passes, and it will pass, that we wouldn't want this to pass us by, that lost opportunity. The second point is recognizing this is an opportunity, recognizing that learning the lessons at 21 versus 61, and even if we're a little bit older, we still will have the benefit from learning from this and learning from trusting in God's provision throughout it.
Yeah.
If the reason why I'm built the way I am is I'm genuinely convinced that God provides. I've seen it firsthand. I've seen it
Yeah.
in my entire life. I've seen it in my entire family. And I've just got the weight of evidence, and it's an honor to give because I just know that He provides. So at 43, I didn't learn that at 43, thankfully.
Yeah.
I learned that, actually, I learned that as a young adult. So those lessons, if I may encourage anybody, take Him by His word. He asks you to test Him,
Yeah.
and I think it's going to prove to be just a very worthy exercise.
Sure. I'm gonna on when we kind of post this, I'm gonna put some just really valuable free access kind of information for people on like how to budget. What are some really good apps they can use if maybe they don't use any apps, right? Or even just like if they've got to apply for EI or something like that, how to go about that, just to help out. Is there just any good resources you just want to add to that list?
Oh, thank you for reminding me of that. So a couple of things, there's some practical things I actually wrote down on my phone that I forgot about. So every bank, by default, all of our young adults will have a bank account.
Yeah.
So every bank right now does have financial assistance programs.
Okay.
So not only should we learn from our budgeting apps, but use the bank resources that we have, because to get anything done in our country now, you have to have a bank account. So by default, it would apply to everybody. The second thing is now is an opportunity to refinance any very high interest loans.
Okay.
Now is the time to do that for sure.
Okay.
So that would be the second practical thing that I would communicate. And then the third is if we have a journal, whether it's electronic or manual, we should have a journal as it pertains just in finances, where we track our expenses, we track our thoughts on that area. So those are practical things that I don't even think of. They're just now second nature for me.
Sure.
And it's on my laptop, and I use it on my laptop. But those are practical things that will have lasting benefits for decades for our young adults.
Yeah. Mark, thanks so much. I really appreciate your time. I know I caught you at work and you made some time, and I appreciate it. I know tons of people are going to appreciate your information too. Thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure.